Sometimes we all need a wake-up call. Anyone following my channel knows I've been having some serious bike maintenance problems recently. Well, actually for the last 5 or 6 months. Well, I think I finally fixed it. Here's what the problem was. My valves were out of adjustment. Way out of adjustment. The tolerance for the intake valve was 5 to 9 thousandths. The smallest feeler gauge I had was 3 thousandths, and I couldn't even get it underneath it. And the exhaust valve was out as well. According to the internet, this can cause hard starting, poor idling, and misfires. Well, I was backfiring. Isn't that a misfire? So I was doing all three. If they are way too loose, the engine may be hard to start, decreased compression, and incomplete fuel burn. And just a general lack of power. This may explain why no matter what I did, I couldn't get it to stop running rich. And here's the funny thing. I could hear the loud tick, 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 tick periodically as I was riding. And this started years ago. Well, to avoid all those problems I just read about, I reset all the valves to the lowest tolerances possible. I believe the technical term is the tightest tolerances. My service manual said I had to remove these 2 covers to move the piston to top dead center before adjusting. Imagine my surprise when I opened the cover and found oil in there. Of course, I said, "Oh no. Isn't that where the electrical stuff like the stator's located? Why is there oil in there?" So, with trepidation, I removed the cover. And of course, that made every single mounting bolt a different size. Imagine my surprise when I got the cover off and I found out that right here, there's a big opening that goes down to the oil reservoir. As you're riding, oil will get splashed up into this area. Despite the fact that the cover has all the electrical crap mounted on... Oh, excuse me. I didn't know you could mix oil and electrical stuff and not have problems. However, since this here is the starting gear, maybe you do want some oil in there. This did answer the question I asked myself when I dumped my bike and it spent 10 or 15 minutes on its side like that, upside down. I was really worried the oil went someplace that it didn't belong. Well, apparently it must have all drained into that side cover. Just in case there was too much oil in there because of my incident, I cleaned all the oil out of it before I reinstalled. If the bike wants to put more oil in there, I'm sure it will. After I adjusted the valves, I took a borescope and took a look at the top of the valves. Somehow I'm thinking they're not supposed to be black. So this pointed me to the gas I'm using. They actually recommend 87 octane. I've been running premium or 91 octane. I'm old enough that they always told us 91 was always better than 87, but apparently not. Many places on the internet state that high-octane fuels, 91 or higher, burn slower, which can actually cause lower performance and efficiency in stock low-compression engines, like my TTR. I had no idea. So, I'm going to go ahead and drop on back down to 87 octane, but I'm going to keep ethanol free. Which presents another problem. The place I buy my gasoline sells ethanol free, but it's not top tier, which means there's no cleaners in it. With no cleaners, how am I going to clean those valves? My solution? I'm going to buy the stuff I need to make it top-tier gas. I'll put a little bit in the tank before each ride. To be quite honest, the repair may have also included the fact that I took my OEM carburetor off, sent it out to have it professionally cleaned in an ultrasonic cleaner, and rebuilt. Before I did that, I had tried 3 different carburetors on this bike, and none of them seemed to make a difference. Okay, I'm kind of giddy with the excitement. Let's see if this thing will actually start. Alright, it's time to give it a try. Choke, power, start. Ooh, that's cold. Holy smokes, it didn't start that nice when it was new. But then again, I've been hearing that tickety-tickety-tick ever since I owned the bike. As far as the fix to the bike, up to this point in the video, that's all the further you have to watch. But if you're a glutton for punishment, and you want to see some of the other stuff I did to get up to that point, continue watching. Here's what I had to do every single time I went out on a ride. The temperature's at a balmy 44 degrees or so, and the bike absolutely refuses to start. At this point, I'd break out my little portable heater and then put it on the engine case. I'd heat the engine case up for about an hour. After this, the bike would actually start. I would run the bike long enough to get the oil nice and hot. Then I'd put hand warmers up against the engine and wrap it up to keep the wind off of it as I'm commuting to the ride site. On really long commutes and cold days, I'd have to pull over about halfway, take all that stuff off, and try to get it to start again to warm that oil back up again. Needless to say, this got pretty old pretty darn quickly. In the beginning, when I had the first problems on my bike, this was the symptom. It started cutting out in fourth gear. Pull up the service manual for that symptom, and they said most likely cause is your carburetor. It also said your air filter can cause this problem, and that's a lot cheaper to replace than a carburetor, so I bought a new one. It didn't help. Before jumping into the carburetor, I noticed down here it says fuel can be the problem, so I took a look at that first. I drained the entire tank and then inspected the fuel that came off the bottom of the tank. It looked clean, but I did discover something a little interesting while I was doing this. The right-hand side of this fuel tank actually has this much unusable fuel just sitting in it, at least as the bike is sitting in the garage. I imagine that once you're riding down the trail, maybe some of it will splash over onto the other side and become usable. But if I ever run out of gas on the trail, I'll just lay my bike over and I'll get probably another 20 miles out of it. I then removed the Petcock from the tank and inspected the fuel screens on them. The primary screen was clean, but the reserve screen had this weird-looking gunk on it. I pulled it off and dried it out to try to figure out what it was. And other than looking weird, I have no idea what it was. So, just in case, I flushed the gas tank 3 different times to make sure nothing else was in there. Oh, then I put a secondary fuel filter in line. I'm retired. I don't have $600 laying around to buy a new carburetor. So, for the first time ever, I explored the world of eBay. The internet said it's a 50-50 chance of getting a good carburetor off of eBay, so I'm going to take the shot. And I lost horribly. The carburetor that came in was of extremely low quality. The spring was too weak to return the throttle back to idle, and the idle screw was too short. I couldn't adjust the idle high enough. So I swapped all that stuff out from the original carb, installed it, and the bike did run, but it didn't fix any problems. So, since I have a 50-50 chance and I've already lost, I'm going to go ahead and buy a second carburetor from this guy, and I'll get the other 50%, which means I'll get a good carburetor. That was my thinking. The new carburetor that came in had exactly the same problems, like it rolled off the same assembly line. This gives eBay a 100% failure rate for carburetors. Let's see if I can find a carburetor at a different source. You guessed it, Amazon. When that carburetor came in, it had the same problems as the first two. It's almost like it's the same guy selling on 2 different platforms. As I was trying new carburetors, another problem cropped up. The idle speed was horrible. It wouldn't stay the same, it kept on adjusting itself to higher and lower, and the starting, it was getting harder and harder. So I finally took the original carburetor and sent it out to get it reworked by a professional. And while I was waiting, I jumped to the next block. I replaced my battery with a brand new one that had more cold cranking amps. I replaced the spark plug 3 different times. I replaced the ignition coil as well as the spark plug wire and boot. I measured the resistance of the pulse coil and it was good. And the CDI unit, we're going to assume that's good since it's over $400. I'm also assuming the charging coil was good because I never had a problem with the battery going bad except for when I was trying to start it. And lo and behold, look what the last item on the list is. Valves. And guess what it turned out to be. Oh, and even though it's not on the list, I also changed the intake manifold and intake manifold O-ring. Just in case somehow that thing was leaking and letting air in. And by the way, since Yamaha absolutely does not know how to build O-rings, the Yamaha O-ring, just like the oil filter O-ring, did not fit. I had to boil it in water to get it to go on.